Tim and Gib, two 12-year-old best friends with a serious love for exploration, were huddled in Tim's backyard. It was one of those cloudy Saturdays, perfect for testing out their greatest invention yet, Znu. Znu wasn't just any drone. It had these cool, blinking blue lights and a cheerful, robotic voice that made everything feel like a real mission. "Ready for flight mode, captains," Zenu buzzed, its propellers worry to life with a satisfying hum. Tim carefully manned the controls, and Gib acted as co-pilot, eyes glued to the small screen showing X-News camera feed. They sent X-News soaring into the gray sky, watching it dip and weave between the trees like a futuristic hummingbird. Just as X-News reached its peak altitude, its camera picked up something totally unexpected. A strange signal flickered onto the control screen. It was a blinking icon, bright and inviting, with the words BBC Education Live Storylab. Gib squinted, leaning closer to the screen. BBC, like the TV channel our parents watch? He asked, tilting his head in confusion. "Yeah, but this looks different," Tim replied, his fingers hovering over the controls. He was intrigued. "It says Storylab. Let's check it out." Without a second thought, Tim guided X-News to follow the signal's source. A moment later, they were on the BBC Storylab website. A simple, powerful message greeted them from the screen. "Create a story. Learn the world." Before they could even process what that meant, the screen glowed with an intense, bright light. A swirl of colors, blues, greens, and purples, erupted from the monitor. And then, whoosh, the vortex of light pulled Tim, Gib, and even Znu right through the screen and into the digital world of the BBC. One dizzying moment later, they found themselves standing on solid ground, though it felt anything but normal. They had landed in a vast, bustling, virtual newsroom. The place was buzzing with energy. Friendly avatars of reporters typed furiously. Filmmakers reviewed footage on floating screens. And scientists in digital lab coats discussed complex formulas. X-News blue lights blinked rapidly as it took in the surroundings. "Sensors indicate we have been digitally transported. We appear to be in a data hub of global information," its voice announced, a hint of robotic excitement in its tone. Just then, a figure made of glowing, shimmering pixels glided towards them. She had a warm smile and a calming presence. "Welcome, explorers," she said. "I am Ava, your virtual guide. Here at BBC Storylab, you can learn how stories shape our world, from news and science to history and art. Are you ready for your first challenge?" Tim and Gib, still wide-eyed with wonder, looked at each other and nodded enthusiastically. This was way better than just flying a drone in the backyard. Ava smiled and gestured to a large screen that materialized out of thin air. An image of a city appeared, showing the aftermath of a major storm, fallen trees, flooded streets, and people working together to clean up. "Your first task," Ava explained, "is to report what happened. But there are two important rules. You must be accurate, and you must be kind." This was the news mission. Tim immediately pulled out a digital notepad that appeared in his hand and started taking notes, observing the details of the scene. Gib, ever the people person, began interviewing the virtual townspeople. He listened patiently to their stories of resilience and community spirit. Meanwhile, Exnu hovered silently overhead, its camera capturing steady, respectful video of the recovery effort. They learned that good reporting wasn't just about getting the story first. It was about checking facts, listening with empathy, and making sure the truth was told in a way that helped, not hurt. When they presented their finished news report, combining their notes, interviews, and Exanews footage, Ava smiled warmly. "Excellent work. You've learned the first and most important rule of journalism. Truth builds trust." No sooner had they finished than the newsroom dissolved around them, replaced by a futuristic laboratory. Bubbling beakers lined the shelves, and sleek robotic arms performed precise experiments. This was the Science Story Challenge. A virtual scientist with a shock of white hair greeted them. He explained how BBC science programs take complex discoveries about our universe and turn them into stories everyone can understand. For their task, they were going to learn about renewable energy. The scientist showed them a miniature wind turbine model. Tim and Gib, with Exnew's help, got to work testing it. They adjusted the blades, measured the energy output, and learned how wind could be turned into clean power. Tim, who loved tinkering, was fascinated by the engineering. Gib, meanwhile, was captivated by the bigger picture. "Wow," Gib said, looking at the spinning turbine. "Science isn't just a bunch of boring experiments in a lab. It's actually stories about how the whole world works." They were learning that storytelling was the key to making even the most complicated ideas exciting and accessible. For their final and most creative challenge, Ava led them to a virtual production studio. It was filled with editing bays, sound mixing boards, and animation stations. "For your final task," Ava announced, "you will create your very own mini-show. This is the creative broadcast." The boys decided to make a show about their favorite subject, Xenu. They titled it Xenu's Great Adventures. They took everything they had learned and put it into practice. They used Xenu's aerial footage from the news mission, added cool sound effects, and even created some simple animations to explain the science of drone flight. They learned how BBC producers combine video, sound, and art to create programs that don't just entertain, but also teach, inspire, and make people think. When their mini-show was complete, it aired on a giant screen inside the Storylab world. A crowd of virtual viewers gathered, and as the credits rolled, they clapped and cheered. Xenu's lights blinked with what could only be described as robotic pride. With their final challenge complete, Ava floated over to them, her pixelated form glowing softly. "You have done wonderfully," she said. "Remember, every story you tell, no matter how big or small, has the power to change how people see the world." She waved goodbye, and the world around them began to flicker. The bright lights returned. The colorful vortex swirled, and whoosh, they were tumbling back through the screen. They landed with a soft thud on the grass in Tim's backyard. The sky was still cloudy. The air was still cool. For a moment, they wondered if it had all been a dream. But then Exnu's cheerful voice broke the silence. Mission complete. BBC Story Lab. Knowledge downloaded. Its lights blinked proudly. Gib broke into a huge grin. Whoa, we didn't just watch TV. We learned how to make it. Tim looked from Xenu to Gib, a new sense of purpose in his eyes. Yeah, he said, a smile spreading across his face. And now we can tell our own stories. From that day on, their adventures took on a new meaning. They realized that with a bit of curiosity, great teamwork, and a love for learning, anyone even to 12-year-olds and their clever drone can discover the incredible power of a good story. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to tell your own stories. See you next time.